The wrench hit the concrete floor of the motor pool at 0600, and Sergeant First Class Hale laughed. Not a quiet laugh, the kind that travels down the bay, past the idle memraps, out through the open roll-up door and into the pale morning. I was 19, 3 months in country, and I laughed too. We all did, because Petty Officer Second Class Dana Reyes had just reached for the diagnostic wrench on a downed map like she owned the place, and Hale had knocked it out of her hand before it cleared the pegboard. Motor pool's not a nursing station, Hale said. Go find the coffee cart, sweetheart. She didn't flinch. She didn't say a word. She bent, picked the wrench up off the floor, set it back on the board exactly where it belonged, and walked to the far bay where a deuce and a half had been waiting 3 days for a transmission. Diagnostic. Nobody followed her. Nobody apologized. I watched her go and thought nothing of it, because I was 19, and Hale had 12 years, and I trusted his read on everything. That was my first mistake. I'm Corporal Marcus Webb. I ran the parts log for Motor Pool 7 at Fob Calder, a forward operating base on the eastern flank of a province that had been bleeding convoys for 18 months. Reyes had been assigned to us 6 weeks earlier on a temporary basis, attached from a support unit nobody had heard of, paperwork that listed her specialty as vehicle systems, multi-platform, and her prior postings as a column of redactions. Hale looked at the redactions and looked at her and decided the redactions were a clerical error, and she was a warm body they'd been sent to fill a parts runner slot. She drew coffee, she logged manifests, she didn't complain. What she did on her own time in the far bay was work. I noticed it after the first week. She was in at 0530 every morning, before anyone else, running diagnostics on vehicles nobody had assigned her. She didn't ask permission, she didn't leave notes, she just fixed things. A fuel injector irregularity on a Humvee that had been pulling left for a month, a hydraulic leak on a loader that 2 of our senior mechanics had called cosmetic. She put the work in and walked away from it. Hale noticed the vehicles running cleaner and chalked it up to the maintenance cycle. I kept my mouth shut because 19-year-olds with 3 months in country keep their mouths shut. The morning of the 14th of the month, the Eastern Access Road woke up angry. I heard it before I understood it, a compressed, rolling sound that shook the corrugated walls of the motor pool and dropped every loose bolt on every shelf in the place. Then the radio on Hale's desk went to chaos. 3 maps from Bravo Element, stalled and dark on the eastern road, 1.4 kilometers out, and the convoy was taking fire from the ridge. 340 Marines behind those vehicles. The road was the only extraction corridor. Without those MRAPs moving, the corridor closed. Hale had his team on the vehicles in 4 minutes. I was in the bay watching them pull diagnostic tablets and cycle ignition sequences and get nothing back. No power, no fault codes, just silence from all 3 CAN buses simultaneously. One of our senior mechanics, Corporal Diaz, called it a cascading electrical fault and said they'd need an hour minimum to isolate it. An hour was not something anyone on the Eastern Road had. I don't know exactly when Reyes appeared. I looked up and she was already moving, out of the far bay, tool roll under one arm, her kit bag over her shoulder, walking toward the vehicle gate with the unhurried stride of someone who had already done this before. Hale saw her and started to say something. She spoke first without stopping. All 3 are the same fault, she said. Aftermarket slave relay on the secondary power bus. They were installed wrong across the batch 6 weeks ago. I flagged it in the maintenance log. She paused just long enough to look at him. The log nobody read. She pushed through the gate. Hale stood there for 2 seconds. I counted, and then he was on the radio clearing her for the vehicle and calling for covering fire on the ridge. Approach. Whatever he was going to say, he didn't say it. I followed as far as the gate and watched the rest through binoculars. What I saw, I have turned over in my mind every day since. She moved the way the best mechanics move. No wasted motion, no hesitation, no performance. She reached the first MRAP under sporadic fire from the ridge and was under the access panel in under 90 seconds. She didn't run diagnostics. She already knew the fault. She bypassed the slave relay manually, bridged the secondary bus with a patch harness she had pre-built and carried in her kit, and the vehicle powered on inside 4 minutes. She was at the second before the driver had finished his systems check. The ridge fire intensified. She did not pick up her head. I watched her take a round through the loose fabric of her left sleeve. I saw the tear, saw the dust kick off her arm, and she tucked her elbow in, adjusted her grip on the patch harness, and kept working. The second MRAP powered on at the 11-minute mark. The third at 18. At 19 minutes and 40 seconds from the time she cleared the vehicle gate, all 3 MRAPs were rolling. The corridor opened. 340 Marines came off the Eastern Road. She walked back through the gate with the tool roll under the same arm the kit bag over the same shoulder. There was a 4-inch tear in her sleeve and a shallow graze along her forearm she hadn't mentioned to anyone. She set her tools on the workbench in the far bay and began cleaning them one at a time, in order the way she always did. Hale came in 20 minutes after that. The motor pool had gone quiet in the way it goes quiet when something large and true has happened and no one knows yet how to speak around it. He walked the length of the bay. He stopped in front of her workbench. She didn't turn around. He came to parade rest. Then he came to attention. Then, in front of every man in that motor pool, in front of me, Staff Sergeant First Class Raymond Hale rendered a full formal salute to the back of a woman who was cleaning a patch harness, connector with a cotton cloth. She set the connector down, she turned. She returned the salute, clean and correct, and held it a full beat longer than required. The log is on your desk, she said. I updated it this morning. Hale nodded. He walked back to his desk. I don't think he spoke again for the rest of the day. I found out later, through the unit's senior warrant officer, who pulled her file after the Eastern Road, that Dana Reyes had 11 years in vehicle systems, 4 combat deployments, a classified special operations attachment, and a record that included 2 field commendations and a call sign she never used in the motor pool. Iron Sparrow. The redactions in her paperwork weren't clerical errors. They were need to know. We hadn't needed to know until we did. I have been a mechanic in the United States Marine Corps for 9 years now. I run my own motor pool. The first thing I do when a new attachment arrives, regardless of rank, regardless of what the paperwork says their role is read the maintenance log. I read it carefully. I read everything they write in it. And I never, not once, knock a wrench out of anyone's hand.